Let's go.
Welcome to the Soul Fam podcast, where we expand your personal universe. I'm Diana Marquetta, and in each episode, Soul Fam co-founder, co-creator Lexi Strummer-Solden and I interview the world's most rising and longtime experts in consciousness, spirituality, entertainment, healing, and science. From Earth's dimensions and dimensions way, way beyond. On the Soul Fam podcast, our frequencies are high and your heart chakras will open as these powerful voices of today share cutting-edge research, profound experiences, and valuable knowledge for your world in this out-of-this-world, thought-provoking, envelope-pushing interviews that could only take place right here on the Soul Fam podcast. Welcome to the Soul Fam podcast. I'm Diana Marquetta, and on this week's episode, the lovely TERESA, LERETTE, and her amazing husband, Scott, are joining us to share their experience, their life capacity in raising a son who is autistic with brittle bone disease. And my lovely friend TERESA also has brittle bone disease. Scott wrote a book called The Unbreakable Boy. And if you have not been to the theaters this week, you need to get out and see the film, The Unbreakable Boy, which is inspiring and emotional and very real. And what else do you have to say about that, Scott?
Well, gosh, open up with that ambiguous question there, how I could go 100 different ways with it. But it's a story. It's a real story that it's one of those ones I think that where truth is stranger than fiction, because, there's so many different aspects to our family. You've got addiction, special needs, you got health issues, parenting, marriage. There's so many different aspects to, I guess, attack it with. And when I get asked to speak, it's a blessing and a curse because I'm able to kind of cater to who I'm talking to. If it's more a faith-based group, or if maybe it's someone regarding addiction, I can obviously go down that lane a little easier. But I think that people right now are starved for content that's real. Mm-hmm. I love superhero movies as much as the next person, but I think that we're seeing now that people want to look at real people and real stories that are meaningful and that they can relate to their own life. And I think that's what we kind of tapped into, that, with John Gunn and the Irwin brothers and everything else. So I hope that our success can build with other people and see more of this content. That's my hope.
That sounds great. Let's back up just a little bit. And for those in the audience who don't know the story of The Unbreakable Boy, do you two want to share a little bit about what this story really is? Because this isn't just a story. These are your lives.
What do you think?
I'll let you answer that one.
She's got to give her input too, but it's
absolutely.
As you've heard me say this before, Diana, but for a long time I would say this, and my business partner would tell me I was wrong, but I used to say it's a story about this autistic kid who's broken almost every bone in his body. He's had his heart removed, repaired, and replaced. He's got an addict father, a suicidal mother, a near-perfect younger brother. It's a story of faith. It's dark. It's hilarious. It's inspiring. And Peter Facinelli would say, that's not it, dude. It's all in there, but it's so much more than that. Mm-hmm. It's going to change the world and touch people. And honest to goodness, I've known Peter for 8 years now, which I can't believe. And I only now have been able to kind of wrap my brain around what he means by changing the world. I really struggled with that. But those things are all in there. It's not this cute story about an autistic kid. Mm-hmm. It's actually based on my memoir. It's essentially a story about Scott, but we have this protagonist, this character, our oldest son, Austin, who is just extremely loud, bold, gregarious,
colorful.
And he's kind of a force of nature. He's autistic. He's got a genetic bone disease. He's got heart issues, and he's verbal and social, but he's verbal and social to a fault. I mean, over the top. And in fact, that's the thing that we're probably dealing with more than anything right now is that Austin does not know how to stop talking. It's to the point where it's pathology. It's not just he's a talkative kid. It's over the top.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that?
Teresa, what was this like for you as a mom? And we've become close friends, so I've been witness to some of the sort of the ups and downs of things. And as a young mother, when I'm watching the movie, it's always chaos when you're a young mom to begin with. Scott decided to sort of open up the world to your world. How did that resonate with you?
Well, I guess it just came natural because when we moved here to the Midwest, we just had such a, they say it takes a village to raise a child, and that's what it really did. We had such amazing people in Red Oak that became friends and neighbors and school teachers and, the paraprofessionals and our friends at church our friends in different places that it really, it took a village. So, to help with Austin, because he was out of town working all the time. And so it almost was like I was a single mom, most of the kids when they were growing up. So when he started this story, I just hope that people could resonate that we're just like them. We're just a husband and a wife raising two children, and one happens to be very colorful. And between he and I, bouncing back and forth from breaking this and breaking that, it just adds a different layer to it. So I was okay with him because I knew it was going to help, especially for Scott with his recovery and sobriety, that he needed to get that out on paper. And, we're hoping that people can relate to our life, that can be just a family, a mom and dad with two kids, but yet it's still hard regardless. And it's okay for it to be hard, and it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to be frustrated, and it's okay to cry at night and think, oh my gosh, what's the answer? Because you don't have all the answers. So that's where my faith really took hold and got me through those times.
So Scott, let's be open
quite
about
behind us because
the dogs. I'm sure they went in.
And Coco's going to go crazy beans until she gets it.
All right, she can come sit. They can be on camera. That's fine. So, Teresa, when did you recognize that Scott had a drinking problem?
We were actually in North Carolina still. See, we're just, I know. It's not, our kids are grown, but we got two puppies that have taken over our lives.
I understand.
We were in North Carolina, and it just seemed like every time we went to a friend's house or out to eat, he had more than just a glass of wine. And, or he had more than one or two beers. And it just seemed like every time I saw it inching up. And then before you know it, he was within 30 minutes drinking a whole bottle of wine. So
as a mom, I mean, Teresa, you're not the first person to experience this with their husbands or boyfriends or, partners, whoever it might be. How did you approach Scott?
Well, when we were in North Carolina, and it was right before we were getting ready to move, and we were at a friend's house for a little get together, and I just noticed he had entirely too much to drink, and he just became so, I'm not going to say he was mean because he wasn't mean, but just so, what's the word? Belligerent with his talk. And it seemed like, he had an axe to grind with me when he drank. He seemed to pull all my mistakes up and start hammering them at me. So when we moved here to Iowa, it slowed down a little bit, but then it started inching back up again. And then I started noticing that it just was happening more and more frequent. And I know in North Carolina, I had told him, you have an issue. And then when we came here and it started ramping up again, I actually tried to get his family to help me intervene. And I think it's really hard for a daughter-in-law to approach that with others in the family, with his mom and dad. Because, nobody wants to know that their child has something that they can't control.
Isn't perfect.
And and so it's almost like I was battling this alone. Like I saw it and other people did see it, but nobody wanted to bring it to the forefront. And I have been through it all my life with my dad. And I knew at some point that I was going to draw the line and be done. And so there were a couple of times that I poured everything out and said, no more. And then, it would just start back again. So,
which is common. That's not uncommon. So, and we talk about trauma a lot here on the podcast, and a lot about recovery and addictions of all sorts, and just what it takes to heal that and to heal the pain that's really where it all starts.
Yeah. And I think for me, being previously married twice, I didn't want to have to go, okay, I have to get, be done with this too,
right.
because I truly, care for Scott and loved him at that point. And, when I was younger, my dad was a happy drunk. So when we were little, and Dad would come home drunk, and Mom would be upset, and she would argue at him, or, not be happy, which she had all right to be. I used to think, gosh, why is Mom so mad at Dad? He's so funny. He's so funny. Because he was just a funny drunk. He was not abusive. He did not say mean things. He was just a clown. But then when you became a teenager and you understood what alcoholism is, I kind of was like, well, why is she still with it?
Right.
The
game changes.
But then when you become an adult and you have children and you recognize that in your spouse, it's not so easy to go, okay, I'm going to be done with them. No, you have two other children to think about, and they need their father, and we need their father, healed. And so it completely, with this whole 360 thing, this whole from childhood to teenager to, okay, now adult, I'm living my mom's life, so to speak. So it was very, I guess, cathartic in a way, right? So, but yeah, there's that one fateful night, and I'm like, nope. Regardless, if I have to be a single mom, there's going to be a change.
Right.
So my downfall was cathartic.
Well, you know what I mean. It was not
I think what she's saying is that it brings the experience full circle, because it's often ancestral and it goes through generations. So what started your healing, Scott? And was it starting to write the blog, the book? Was it a call to faith?
People are not going to want to hear this, but I'm sure you've heard people refer to things as being super simple, but not at all easy. My sobriety that night versus 24 hours later was super simple, super simple. I went to a meeting, and that began the building of a habit, and which allowed me to bring my faith back into the mix. So it's like so many things that happen from the book to the movie. A lot of things happened simply, not at all easy, but the same thing. It was so simple. There was no rocket science to my sobriety happening, but faith was the number one element, as well as engaging with other people, in everybody else's brokenness and meetings and things like that.
Yeah, because he was, it wasn't me making him to go. I mean, I gave him a choice. He can either, choose alcohol or choose his family, and so he had to make that decision. I couldn't make it for him, and so I think when people do have to go through that, they have to get to a point where they see no other option.
Well, but I saw it though. I mean, again, it's something that I don't think most alcoholics can probably admit it, and I'm not better or worse than anybody else. However, early on, I decided that I understood that I could not drink. I admitted it. And, what are the steps? Is it Maslow? All the hierarchy of
hierarchy of
denial
needs,
and grief and all this and that. I think I moved through the denial really quick. I mean, it happened like that, because 24 hours later, I realized, even though I don't remember it, I realized what had happened and what didn't happen but could have happened. Therefore, I'm like, I scared myself to death.
Good.
Yeah, I did.
Scared yourself straight there.
Well, I just wonder if the boys were in the car with him, if he would have had that same realization.
I don't know. It's a great point.
Because, I know that we have someone deep in our lives that has a drinking issue and has for many years and has lost everything in his family. And we just, for me, I'm just like,
same situation,
same situation,
same exact
but
setup, same exact.
He's had a lot. This person has had a lot of lows, but I don't know. I guess it's different for everybody. I can't speak, but I have wondered that, if the boys weren't in the car with him and he knew that the outcome could have been very tremendously tragic if it really would have hit him as hard.
I don't know. I mean, I don't deal in hypotheticals.
I know.
But that's what happened. So how since we go into a lot of woo-woo stuff here on this podcast especially, and we will get to talking a little bit more about autism and neurodivergence, but how strongly did you feel God's presence, and did you feel that there was divine intervention or divine happenings for both of you, whether it was the morning after you woke up from the night out, or Teresa, did you feel a presence that compelled you and gave you a sense of courage?
I was praying. I was being a prayerful wife. I was praying that, he would wake up and see that he had an issue with that. And he just, he wasn't the same Scott I met, even though we did meet and things kind of happened so quickly.
Right.
I thought I knew him, but when he was on alcohol, it was a completely different person. And that there just was a huge difference in his attentiveness to the family, or just really checked out. I mean, like, I did feel like he was checked out a lot of times, but on the alcohol, especially when it got really bad, I would say the last year, it was like complete checkout. So I felt so lonely, and I dived really into our church, and that's what really got me through. But I was definitely praying that, okay, how are we going to defeat this?
What about you, Scott? Did you have a sense that God's hand was in on all this?
No. I mean, it's so easy to say that, I had him he was on, in my driver's seat, or, the passenger seat with me. He's on my shoulder, this and, all the cliches I think of, I've got more life to live. So it wasn't my time. I was blackout drunk. So it's so easy to look back even the next day and just say, oh, it was divine. I wasn't supposed to die, and the kids either. So I don't know. I don't know. I think about that a lot. I have. That's interesting. Over the years. But I think more so, though, the stronger my faith became and the more it came back to me, because it wasn't an overnight thing.
Right.
Like I lost it pretty quick. When I left for college, I lost my faith pretty quick.
Interesting.
I don't know if it came back as quick as I lost it. But
does it feel different now, Scott? Does your sense of faithfulness? I mean, so disclosure here, Scott and I grew up in the same hometown, and it's sort of one thing to be brought up in this atmosphere of faith. It's another thing as an adult to sort of grasp what faith means for you, what your relationship with God or the Creator or the angels mean to you. So did you feel differently this time?
Well, Teresa was in a different place than me, obviously, but I was like so many children and teenagers where I was, mom drugged me to church and catechism and, as Catholics that we were. So you're kicking and screaming, trying, going to that. And even when I left for college, so I never really knew God. Not right. That doesn't sound right, but
I understand what you mean.
I've always believed in God. I've always believed there's a higher power. I've always been a Christian, but I think God's a funny word. For me, it's, I think what's more important is believing in Jesus, because God can mean anything, even to Hollywood types. God can mean whatever they want it to mean. So I think more so it's the Jesus word that, died on the cross and this and that. And yeah, it's, I think that my faith, though, it's taken all these years, though, to become as strong as it is. And today, though, I think that Teresa and I know, I won't speak for her, but without getting super personal, but, in terms of us affecting and touching other people, it's, vomiting on them. It's more so living and being more Christ-like and leading by example. Because some folks that aren't at that place in their life, you can't tell them. it'll never work. In fact, it'll regress. It'll be regressive. And the only thing that you can do in some situations is to live your life, in that vein. There's more to it than that, obviously, but I think leadership by example is a huge thing. Leadership might not be the right word.
Yeah, because we're pretty messed up.
Teresa,
I think it's
so
just
funny.
love. That's the ultimate word. That's the greatest of these, and is love. And so, just loving everybody where they are and meet people where they are. I know. I'm sure for Scott. I mean, he's saying that he didn't have this relationship with Jesus growing up, even though his mom took him screaming and kicking. But she was laying the foundation. So the foundation was laid, and I think in myself as well. Me and my sisters were playing out in the front yard on a Sunday when a church bus went by. And they stopped and talked to our parents and said, we offer a great, children's program, youth program. We would love for you guys to come to our church. And so my mom said, yes. So every Sunday we would be outside waiting to go to church. And so I did grow up in church very young. And I too, like Scott, you become a young adult after high school. And that doesn't seem like it wasn't a priority for myself as well.
Right.
However, when we did get married, I knew that was essential for my children to get that as well and to bring my faith back into it. And I always signed him up for everything at church, in Charlotte or here, at our church back in North Carolina. I'd always sign him up for something when they would have a festival or something.
Connecting.
We have to dress up like this. You have to be, you have to go and help me take care of these 10-year-olds. And
you know what though? But church is just, you've heard this before, where a church, it's just a building,
right?
It's just a building,
right,
where people go to meet. With that said, it's also extremely important, I think, where you go, you really love it, because like in Charlotte, we ended up. Some of our best relationships and friends in the world are from Trinity United Methodist in Charlotte. Because we love that church, we love the people there, and everything about it. It was much more than faith in Jesus, So, I think it's easy to fake it till you make it.
Did you feel a connection with Jesus, Scott? Do both of you feel this Christ connection? Which I want to, we don't always say that word. I don't know why not. But did you feel like a connection, especially with Christ, as you were working through your recovery, or did it grow?
Yeah, it grew, definitely. And there's this one book 24/7 book that
Jesus Calling.
That was a good one though. But, I definitely got into more daily scripture and things like that. And, it's odd though, because people ask me about meetings, and I don't go to a lot of meetings anymore.
Right.
I think that some people have to have them. Their life depends on it.
Right.
It's just like, for example, like in the other room, Teresa and Logan have a dry sink and there's booze in it. It doesn't bother me. I don't know, that's not a very good analogy, but some people have got to have meetings at least once a day. I haven't been in a meeting in months, and I probably should, but I think what meetings allowed me to do was to bring my faith back into the equation, because so much of AA is based on, a higher power, and everybody takes that and runs with it, whichever way they want to go. And for me, it was God, Jesus. So yeah, it was an evolution though.
What about for you, Teresa?
Well, I think we're always growing. I'm always growing in my faith with Jesus and with the relationship with him. And I know, we're all like a beautiful plant that he's always pruning. So, you were always growing and always learning. He's always going to prune you. And he's, because we're not perfect. There's not a perfect soul on this earth. There only was one person. And we'll never be perfect here. We'll only be perfect when we're, in front of, once we're through, yes, we'll be perfect. And so I know for me, I have to be in my church setting. I crave it. I crave being around my sisters in Christ, brothers in Christ. Every chance I get, signing up for a Bible study to learn more, because I love history. So I love the whole theology and all that behind the Bible, and it helps me to understand and where I need to grow. So yeah, it's a daily thing for sure.
So when you realized that Austin was autistic, I mean, what did you both feel? And how old
Well,
was he?
I didn't. I mean, you can call it denial, but I was more in awe, not wanting to believe that there could be anything wrong.
Mhm.
Now I look at the position I took at that time, and I'm like, I shake my head because I would think that there's nothing that could be wrong with my firstborn son.
Sure.
No, I just didn't. I didn't want. No, I'm like, no, just no. Meanwhile, she was in Lonnie, our neighbor and dear friend, or looking at Time magazine, and this 30 years ago,
Right.
25 years ago.
I know.
Oh my gosh, this is what he has. He's Asperger's, and I'm like, I don't want to hear it. I don't. She's like, read this. No, I don't want to read it. I don't. No.
Well, I know for me, Austin had his head injury at 7 months old. So,
Right.
and all the doctors would say that it would be probably school age before we see if there's any repercussions from that head injury. And as far as his learning, probably would have some learning difficulties, but we won't know to what extent until he gets into that environment. So I had a neighbor in the neighborhood. She knew I was always exhausted. I must have looked at it for sure. And she recommended the church that we ended up going to, Trinity Church, that they had a play school program. It was like a preschool, but it's play school. And, she thought I should check it out. And it would give me an opportunity to have, some me time.
Right.
Especially with Scott. He was out of town 3 weeks out of the month. So,
right. It's a lot.
It was all left up to me. And thank goodness I had such a great neighbor in Lonnie and my best friend Kelly and all the others. So I checked into it and thought, okay, this is great. So at that point, I immediately enrolled Austin. And then once Logan was 2, I enrolled him. And then they had an opportunity where I could come. They needed a play school teacher because I would volunteer for them. And so I became a play school teacher. And it just, it was just such a huge difference between Austin and the other kids. When he would, the other kids would play together and he wouldn't. He would always be to himself. And before that even happened, and I was still, working, and the kids were in daycare. The daycare workers would mention certain little things to me that were just kind of like, a little odd. And so all that just started combining together, and then his behaviors and it just started mounting up. And it's like, okay, well, are we just that bad at parents? Are we doing something wrong? What are we not doing right? And then once he started kindergarten, he knew more going into kindergarten than he did when he graduated kindergarten. When he finished kindergarten, it's like he started regressing. Like he knew his ABCs, but then he didn't know his ABCs. Right. It's like one day he knew them, and the next day it's like it was written in Latin. And
interesting.
What's a day? So I was forever like banging my head up against the wall trying to figure it out. And his doctors are like, it's probably from his head injury. And, we just have to just give him the tools that he needs at school and work with the teachers. And, but he never got an official diagnosis until he was like really 14 years old. So.
Wow, you guys. I did not know that.
Yeah.
That is a long time for you not to have any sort of.
He had every acronym under the sun that he went through. ADD, ODD, OCD, ADHD, PDD, NOS. That was the first one that he was at.
Oh, yeah.
Pervasive developmental disorder, non-otherwise specified. That's a diagnosis. What it means is it's a developmental disorder, and they don't really know what it is.
Wow.
Probably contributed to his head injury. So,
remind me what happened with his head injury. I'm sorry, I don't remember that. But
he was at a daycare, and he was left on a changing table without a railing on it.
Right.
Or strapped
and
in.
He fell off, and
they walked away
4 feet high, and he had all these skull fractures, and it was horrible. 2
linear skull fractures on the left side with splinter fractures on the right side. Yeah. So, but we were even that for someone with osteogenesis imperfecta, that's usually death.
Right. Tragic.
Or definitely severely cognitively impaired. But it's as though God held his head because the bones stayed together. And so there was no bleeding in the brain that they saw. And so he was very much a little miracle in that sense. And when I was pregnant with him, at 3 months pregnant, I started having severe pains. I didn't even know I was pregnant. So at that point, and went in and they found a tumor that was attached to my ovary and to the bowel that was, and so as my uterus was stretching, it was pulling that tumor. Oh. And so that's how I found out I was pregnant. Oh, by the way, you're pregnant. Did you know you're pregnant? Hello? This is why. No. So I had to go immediately into laparoscopic surgery. So he was exposed to all those things, that surgery at 3 months gestation, which had a high risk of him not even making it through that. So, could it been his autism be exposure to that? Is it due to his head injury?
I know.
We just don't
all
know.
the things.
It's just the way God made him. So I quit making those guesses. But for a long time, I'm the one that chose that daycare. So for a long time, I felt the guilt. I should have checked them out better. I found out that they had all these infractions before and didn't even know it. Friend recommended them. They seemed really nice.
I understand.
And unfortunately, the main daycare worker left a 16-year-old in charge of the daycare room. So
choice in husbands and daycare.
It happens. As parents, you question everything you do all the time anyway. And the most highly recommended individuals or schools or daycare centers have flaws. Right. So that's what happens.
This was God's plan all along. I mean, yes. If you believe in faith, which I highly do, there's a reason to everything. So I know being at the point that we are now, and with the movie and seeing and hearing from all these people, it goes, okay, now it makes a little sense. Does it make it like, okay, do we have all the answers for Austin? Right. Absolutely not. We still struggle today. We struggled with him. And, but it does help to know that, okay, it's not completely our fault. It's not just us messing him up, right?
There's a bit of a diagnosis, so it gives you some sense. So let's talk about the movie and then autism, and was it touchy for both of you to talk about Austin's condition? And I don't want to dismiss Logan in this either, who's a tremendous young man, but was it tricky to introduce that to the world? Did people get it?
It kind of happened though I started a blog, and the response initially was really positive, and it kind of started trickling. Mm-hmm. And only now I think that we all really see the ramifications of it after all this has happened, because Teresa and I read an article this morning by a Cinemaholic. Uh-huh. The title was, "What is Scott Lorette doing now?" And it had so much detail about my life. Oh, I was blown away. The nicknames of our dogs.
Social media.
Coco and Gracie.
Oh, but I mean, I've had no problem with it. I think Logan is more of Logan's not an introvert, but he's much more reserved and much more
private.
Mm-hmm. Much more private.
Mm-hmm. He doesn't talk about it a lot.
Yeah. So, but he'll be the one though that comes up to you in a moment where you never expect it and hug you and be extremely emotional and say, "I'm so proud of you for doing this." Mm-hmm. It's helping people. He gets it, but then he won't do that for a month. He just, so, I mean, it kind of became our persona. I mean, you've been along this journey with me for 15 years, basically, give or take. So it took on a life of its own. And I just wanted to share it. And I don't think she minded.
Teresa.
But I was already doing it.
You were already living it.
So checked out and to himself when the kids were really in school age. And I was at school all the time. I was there on the first week of school when they had first time they would have assembly at the beginning of the year. I was there to talk about why you can't push Austin around, in the hall. It could hurt his, he could fall and break something. Mm-hmm. So you can't tug on him because it could pull his arm out of socket. And then, we know he has these little quirks about him. So, and so every year I would have to do that. I always volunteer, I was a room mom for both our boys, and, was in school trying to deflate issues that would come about. And, it's funny because a lot of the issues weren't from the other students, but from people in the education system who didn't want to know about autism.
Oh, interesting.
Even though for Austin, he was the first diagnosed autistic student to go through Red Oak
Who recognized it.
Recognized it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think.
However, when we were getting ready to move here, Austin was starting third grade. Did he start in third grade? Yeah, he was starting third grade. And we, I said, talked with the principal, Buck Laughlin. He was amazing. God rest his soul. He said, I know we don't have an official diagnosis, but we have all these other things. And it is considered to have a head injury. So that opens up these services. It was his head injury. It wasn't all this ADHD, ADD, OCD, which should be. And I think probably is recognized now as issues that can be helped in IEPs and stuff. But he's like, but we're going to treat it as though he does have autism because, he had all these, he just wasn't officially diagnosed as people.
Right.
When you sit and talk to him, unless you really, once you get to talking to him, then you go, okay, wait a minute, there's something here.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is so social and he does talk all the time and he does want to engage in talking. And I think for the longest time, people thought autism was kids that just don't talk.
Right. They're not social.
They're shy.
I think she was kind of I thought she was going somewhere else. That was regarding some of the educators.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I don't want to, go down that path too far, but this one comment I think will kind of illustrate how, we have so far to go, but there was one educator at one moment in time where they'd essentially said, we're not going to accommodate for Austin. He used the word accommodate. And I put my head to I just went,
what was after school activity?
And I was just like, wait. I'm like, say that again.
Yeah.
Please say that again.
After school activity.
Because.
And it was that, I know, I'm sorry, I'm butting in, but it was that we're not making any special accommodations because of his autism and his fertile bones. And I about flew out of my seat.
See, one of the things,
because yes, he does get accommodations for those.
Right. But you have to realize too, though, because so many people ask us about what we did, his IEP, we control it, all this and that. But I think that Austin is some of the way that he is today is because we mainstreamed him as much as humanly possible.
Right.
We had him in every environment where he was in a typical classroom as much as we could, unless it just didn't work. And I think that I don't know, but you may have some people that have their child in special education all day long.
Right.
And not with typical kids.
Right.
I think it's a huge mistake, unless, of course, it doesn't work.
Right.
And I think for us, that had a huge impact on the kind of person that he is today.
Well, I think it's the severity of everything, too. I mean, you have to take into account where that child's strengths are and where their weaknesses are. Yes, there are some kids that can't be mainstream. Absolutely, I get it. For Austin, he knew, as aware as he was of his condition, he also was that unaware of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Wait a minute. I'm just a boy. I'm a typical, to him, he didn't have anything to prevent him from being around other students.
Right.
And he just wanted to be considered just like.
Well, wait, I think what you're trying to say is he knows and he knew that he was different. He knows the things that he has. However, he didn't think that was such that it should keep him away from any other typical kid in a classroom or anything else.
I think I said that.
You already said that? Okay.
She did. But yes, he is like that. The obvious, I mean, he's an adult now. He's 30 years old, correct? So, and by the way, 1 in 36 children now are considered autistic. So whether it's the environment or vaccines or whatever, this is where we're at. So, and I think we'll see more. I mean, I hope what we see is an understanding and an emergence of whether it's methods or an acceptance of neurodivergence, because I think it's much more common than we ever thought.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It used to, I think 15 years ago it was 1 in 110. I know that about 5-7 years ago it was 1 in 22. The numbers keep bouncing around. I think the environmental things you talk about, I think the diagnosis and the treatments, the diagnostics that are available to diagnose. There are kids now being diagnosed at 8 months old.
Sure.
It kind of blows me away how that is.
And I don't know that it's abnormal. I mean, I quite frankly don't think
Yeah.
this is an abnormality, so to speak. I think there's always a touch of something or an element. All of our brains work differently. We all think differently. We all feel differently. So I hope what we accomplish as a society is just to embrace one another and understand one another.
Well, you kind of swerved into that area where I'm pretty passionate about a couple of things in this where, for example, not so much the book, but more so the movie where people would be, oh my gosh, you're making this autism film about this dad feeling better about himself because he deals with this autistic kid and the kid needs to be fixed. And some folks are really resentful of that and don't like that. I've been emailed by some folks through my website, and I just responded and said, I really appreciate your position and how you feel about that. Mm-hmm. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. And when Austin's having certain days that he has, he will turn to me outright. And Teresa's heard him say this, where if I could have a pill today and fix myself, I would. So you can't tell me that isn't part of the autism world. It is. I belong to some parent websites, Facebook pages, some father Facebook pages. Just today, I was telling Teresa about these 2 posts I saw where these fathers are talking about their kids who were just doing these things with breaking things and being
destructive.
Yeah.
Just self-destructive, right. and playing with their food and other things, in the frustration. And these people were just going crazy. And we feel like that sometimes, which I don't. I'm sure. I think people think, hey, you wrote a book and you made a movie, everything's fine and dandy, you fixed it all. No, I mean, today we had part of today, which was just horrible. But
frustrating.
There are always people there's always people that have more challenges than you, and then there are people that look at you and think, oh, you got it made. So it's all relative. There are folks that will always have more challenges than you, and I pray for some of those folks because I think in comparison, Austin's a piece of cake.
He is,
but he's not.
Yeah,
he's not.
I mean, I think for me, I think because I wear my feelings very on my shoulder, very close, very empathetic towards people, that I know how incredibly blessed we are that Austin is verbal. He's verbal. I can leave him at home and go grocery shopping or go to a Bible study or something and know he's okay. He can be here by himself for hours at a time. Definitely not overnight. And he knows that he's not allowed to use the oven and the stove or any of that. So, but yeah, there's families out there that can't leave their kids alone. I mean, and they can't communicate with them. They never heard their voice. All that. So we know how incredibly blessed we are that Austin is as social as he is, and that the abilities that he has, we are very blessed with. But then also, it is very hard. It is very frustrating because it's like, oh my gosh, he has 3 great days in a row, and then that 4th day comes, and it's like, where did he go? I mean, I know I could be moody. We all could be moody. We can all have our moments, but this is so on the spectrum of like a completely different person. So it's like, how can this be? And I know early on when autism was being thrown around, that, kids having autism, there was a lot of stigma to, well, it's because they're not being parented correctly. And that was kind of like why they had autism, and, leaving your child unattended, not paying attention to your child or something like that.
Oh, it was cold mothers.
Oh, is that what it is?
You can Google that. No, really, 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
70s into the 80s. That was one of the clinical things, cold mothers.
Because they weren't given that.
They weren't loved enough. Something. I can tell you, Austin's loved a lot.
That's not what it was, because I was very nurturing to my children.
Of course you were. I mean, he's very loved. I'm just putting that out there for sure.
But yeah, it is. It's a daily, ever-changing learning situation.
Yeah, keeping that landscape.
I was always at school advocating. I think for folks out there that listen to this that have a child that's just been diagnosed, when they get on an IEP, an individualized education program, you are completely have complete authority of that. They cannot change, add, do anything to that IEP without your permission. And so I knew that straight ahead. I took that very seriously. I scoured that IEP. So when things weren't being done that I knew should have been done in the IEP, I was at the school going, whoa, wait. What do you mean you're doing this? I thought in IEP we're supposed to be doing this. Or why hasn't this started? Wait a minute. I think there was a situation in high school where they were never going to consider Austin late for class, no matter what, because of his severe attention deficit. I mean, it's like walking along squirrel. I mean, like really bad. So, and you cannot push an autistic person to go any faster than what they have determined is their speed, as far as tying a shoe, get the book bag together, whatever, So for Austin, he was never going to be considered late for class. And he was going to class one day and a young girl outside the door dropped her book bag and the contents spilled out. And Austin stopped and immediately helped her get the contents back in the bag.
Right.
We should have took the whole school outside, shot off fireworks and said, amazing job, Austin. Amazing job. But instead, he gets in the class when the bell is ringing and the teacher starts, you're late. And he's like, no, I'm not late. You don't understand. I was out there helping someone. No, you were late. You need to get in here. But, so for him, he's like, but I was doing a good thing. I was helping somebody. I can't, So, and it just went on and on and on. And he could not grasp that, wait a minute, we need to make sure we pay attention to the bell. And I'm sure this teacher was just trying to make him be more aware of that, but she didn't catch the moment. This should have been a teaching moment. And this was the sped ed teacher. Amazing job that you stopped to help her. He was aware of that. I mean, that's like, that's huge. That's huge. And so it just crescendo to where he became uncontrollable and it sent him into actually a seizure. So
I'm so sorry.
I was forever battling certain people that just felt like he just was spoiled and gets his way and can do whatever he wants. And if it were that easy, if that were the case, boy, I would rather have that than for him to go through his autism.
Right.
Because he'll tell you autism sucks.
Aw.
And he'll tell you, I don't want to have autism. And I will have to say, as a parent, I wouldn't want him to have autism. But he does. So we got to deal with it the best we can.
Well,
getting the best help that he can have. But if you want true feelings, of course we wouldn't want our child to have autism.
I think what's important to know about this whole thing, though, what she's describing is that, because like there's some folks out there that are saying this autism, it's a blessing and it's a gift and et cetera, et cetera. And it's so easy to think that. And even I think that we're getting some pushback. Again, it's a very small subset of people, but that might comment on the movie or even on my book and say, this isn't real, this isn't truth and this and that. And at least I'm aware now that it's a medical condition. It's something in the brain. But I think those folks that maybe are living with an autistic person that is just got things so much different than Austin, so much more challenging. They also have to, I'm not saying they have to appreciate our perspective. At the same time, it is our experience and it's what we're going through. And we're just trying to make his life, our life, everything the best that it possibly can be.
Exactly. So
to have actually physical violence threatened against you because of you're trying to present autism in this certain way is just, it's comical, but because I just want to say, this is our experience, I didn't make or write a book about some fictional character. I wanted to present what we have. And there may be another book and another movie someday about that neurodivergent, nonverbal, 18-year-old Hispanic girl.
Right. Exactly.
But this isn't it.
But then I also say that with Austin and his personality, I do feel, because I did church my kids, I did take them to church. They know who Jesus is. He knows who Jesus is. He was commenting about our writer-director's new TV show, and which is the story of David. He's like, came down last night. That's my favorite. favorite story of the Bible is David with the Goliath, So, and he does have this happy presence about him. He is generally happy most of the time, and he does see things in a happy light. And I love that about our son. Would he be that way if he didn't have autism? I don't know. I hope so. I hope it was some of the foundation that we laid that makes him pleasant to be around when he's around other people. He's not,
I would
he
say
doesn't
so.
like us most of the time because, he's 30 years old. He knows he's 30. He knows he's an adult, but we have guardianship.
Right.
And there's times that we have to put a consequence and say, take his phone away.
Right.
And no 30-year-old should have to have their mother or father take their phone away.
I understand.
It shouldn't happen.
I understand.
For us, in order for him to grasp something that we know could be detrimental for him, there has to be some type of consequence. And he knows what a consequence is. So there has to be that to get him back on track, to de-escalate his thoughts and bring him back down to, wait a minute, I need to think about this again.
Right.
Of an action.
Right. It's interesting.
And it's just a repetitive thing. I mean, we have to be consistent about it.
What are you hoping audiences, including parents, experience from The Unbreakable Boy?
I've said this so many times, and I think you probably heard me say it, but I hope that they can, even if it's some small thing, they can walk out of there and relate it to their own life. And that's what it's, and even, Peter, you know how much love I have for my partner. And he has harped on this for so many years, which is, this is bigger than you and your family. The story is something that we are turning into this vehicle, this film that people are going to go and see, and it's going to touch other people's lives. So they don't even have to remember my name. I just hope that when they leave, it touches something within their own heart that affects change. And we're seeing it. It's overwhelming online, on social media, on print and TV. It's just, the response is overwhelming. We knew we would get this, and I knew there was this one demographic, the men. And I don't know if Lionsgate predicted it to be like this, but the grown man response is just crazy.
Yeah.
We have seen so many grown men crying. Not just that, the one that shocked me the most was people saying that they were sobbing tears over the trailer. That one I can't. I'm too close to it to really appreciate
at this point.
But still, people walking out of the movie theater, when someone tells you, and not all of these they're not exceptions to the rule either. It's, you hear it over and over where it's like, either it's the best movie I've seen in a long time, or it's the best movie I've ever seen. For someone to say that to you, I'm like, awesome. Why? Tell me why. and I want them to tell me why it touched them the way that it did. So, man on the street interviews, there's some out there. I wish we would do more, because those are really poignant.
What about?
And I can think that I hope people walk away from seeing the movie and they can see something in their life that, because life is not easy. There's not anybody out there that's been born, gone through childhood, gone through teenage years, become a young adult, go through school, college, whatever, is working, starts a family, and not have something happen, and it be, to them, could be just as traumatic as maybe something small that has happened to us. So that they could see that there is hope. And I hope that they see also that for me, without God in my life, I would be completely a mess. And I don't know where we would be today if we even would be together, if Jesus wasn't in our life. I do believe that. I do believe that. And that just try to find joy in everything. And if you can, is prove it. If you take your circumstance and you see somebody else's circumstance and you give back in some sort of way. Maybe it's your neighbor down the street. You see their trash can flying down the street. You go help them and you go get it and put it back in their yard. Oh my gosh. Someone thought enough of me to go get my trash can. To me, that's like, yay, thank you. I'm so appreciate that. If we just can learn to be kind to one another and to give each other a little bit of grace when we're not having good days and realize, okay, they're just having a bad day. It's okay. We can have bad days and don't beat yourself up too much. for the mistakes you're going to make, and that we're all going through something.
Unless you're us and we get our trash cans repossessed.
I guess our trash cans are repossessed.
Happens.
I mean, it's not like we had a car. There's a story to that. So,
I know. Trust me.
So, yeah,
don't worry about it.
That we didn't pay our trash bill. It was a mix-up of some sort. But they did.
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
Threw the trash on my driveway. I'm like, well, my neighbor's like, someone stole your trash cans today. They threw your trash all over your driveway. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's another story. So you've been super generous with your time and would love to maybe have Austin on sometime. But I really appreciate your openness and your honesty. And I'm really glad you made this movie. Whether I knew you or not, Scott, I as somebody, as just a human being, it was such a joy to watch this movie. And I will say also to hear the response of others around me was amazing. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay.
We love you.
We love you. I love you. Word for our sponsors, Owelli Supplements and CBD Pure, both whom have generously offered to give you 15% off using the SoulFam podcast coupon code SoulFam, SOULFAM, and free shipping. And trust me, when you're ordering stuff like this, it actually really adds up. You can save quite a bit of money, several dollars for every order. Both Lexi and I have worked with these products and their companies, and we have firsthand experience, and we really like these companies, sincerely. Owelli, OWELI.com, is a supplement company that uses natural ingredients based on ancient knowledge coupled with modern science, which sounds a lot like the SoulFam podcast. I am a huge supplement person. I take multiple supplements each day. The quality of Owelli supplements is high and effective, in my opinion. I take Move for joint health because I work out almost every day. I do yoga, I walk, I hike, I ride horses. And secondly, I mix collagen, peptides, hydrolyzed protein for a protein shake every day so I can be sure to get the right amount of protein in my body every day. And for women, I personally feel that's super important. CBD Pure, www.cbdpure.com, is made with non-GMO hemp grown without herbicides, pesticides, and other dangerous chemicals. Both Lexi and I feel like this is a stellar product. I use the CBD Pure 500 cream for pain in my neck from texting and working at a computer and a car accident I was in. Lexi uses CBD Pure Pet Health to help some of her posse of rescued cats who show up at her doorstep. They often have joint issues and other movement issues, and this product really seems to help Lexi's cats. Both products work superbly. No harmful side effects, at least from our experience. So once again, we thank our sponsors, CBD Pure and Owelli Supplements. We'll post links to both product lines on our Instagrams on my link tree and on YouTube and on our upcoming website, Patreon. Just remember the code for 15% off with free shipping, which once again adds up to a lot, is SoulFam, SOULFAM. That's SoulFam for our SoulFam.